you from both sides of the planet. You're listening to the Redskins Capital Connection. Now here's your hosts, Chad and Mark.
Hello Redskins fans, and thank you for tuning in for another edition of the Redskins Capital Connection podcast. My name is Chad. I'm coming at you from Canberra, Australia. My co-host is Mark. He's coming at you from Richmond, Virginia. Mark, how are you doing this morning, sir?
Chad, I am doing fantastic after really one of the best Sundays Redskins fans have had in a while. Big win for the Skins. What did you think about that, Chad?
Well, you're exactly right. Redskins fans, your Redskins crushed the New Orleans Saints in a 47-14 blowout win at FedEx Field, thanks to a big day out from quarterback Kirk Cousins, who completed 20 of 25 passes for 324 yards, a career-high 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and he ended the day sitting on the bench with a perfect passer rating of 158.3, watching Colt McCoy mop up for him. So, I mean, for Redskins fans, it was really a perfect Sunday afternoon, especially with the other results that we saw around the NFC East.
Yeah, I mean, was there really what's the last time the Redskins have had a more delicious Sunday? I mean, think about it. Not only do the Redskins win in blowout fashion, so we get that rare Sunday, which we get if we're lucky once a year, where the Redskins blow someone out and we can relax at the end of the game. And then we get to watch the Cowboys lose in agonizing fashion, and the Eagles lose in agonizing fashion, and 3 hours later, the Giants lose in agonizing fashion. It's not just that all three teams lost, that all three teams got beat, but they all lost tight games in agonizing fashion while we had a blowout win. Just an absolutely fabulous Sunday, and I honestly can't remember the last time a Sunday went that well for Redskin fans.
Well, I think the only time a Sunday's gone that well for Redskins fans is when they go to, Cold Rock Creamery or Cold Stone Creamery, whatever it is you have over in the States. I can't remember the exact name, but when they order a literal Sunday. Because apart from that, there's no other deliciousness that, the Redskins fans have been able to attribute to a Sunday for quite some time. So that was a hell of a day. You are exactly right. The losses that the other NFC East teams suffered were, if you're one of the kind of Redskins fans who takes joy in watching the other NFC East teams suffer, you had a great time watching those games.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I know normally we break into what the NFC East did for the week later in the show, and there's tons to talk about with the Redskins this week, which we'll do later, but, you watch the Tampa Cowboy game, and to see that Jameis Winston had a surefire touchdown just to lose the ball untouched. The Cowboys have the game won. And then to have a penalty completely unrelated to that play, because I think Jameis Winston was going to run that ball no matter what. To have a penalty unrelated to that play cost Dallas the game. And then to see Des Bryant just lollygag. He was interfered with on that play, which makes it even better. The fact that he actually was interfered with, the Cowboys actually were kind of screwed on that play, just makes it even better. I used to care when people said, hey, the referees blew this for us. Not anymore. You know what? Win the game. Who cares? So that was just fabulous to see. Eagles blowing a 16-3 lead. But even more importantly than that, and of course we can get into the Giants too if you want, but even more importantly than that, the Washington Redskins with an absolute laugher of a game. And we can talk about, a lot of people have said this week, in this week's edition of Making Excuses for Kirk Cousins' Good Performance, that the New Orleans Saints are not a good defense. They're not. Okay? No one is talking about the fact that the Saints offense put up 14 points against the Redskins defense, and the Saints offense is pretty good.
Yeah, the Redskins defense came out to play this week, that's for sure. Mark Ingram, he had that, huge 70-yard run that Will Blackman saved from being a touchdown, which was a hell of an effort from him. But, Mark Ingram is one of the top, I would say, 6 or 7 running backs in the NFL. He's very underrated. And that, on that big play, it's not that guys missed, even though they did, but it was more about him just making a play and credit where it's due. He made a hell of a play. But apart from that big run, he was unsighted for most of the day. Apart from Brandon Cooks getting that 60-yard touchdown, he was unsighted for most of the day. It was the kind of day where everything went right for the Redskins, and I'll tell you how you know it was the kind of day that everything was going right for the Redskins. Here's a few things that happened, and this is not, for any Redskins fans, well, they all know about it by now, but things like Perry Riley, perfect in pass coverage. Not only did he deflect a pass down earlier in the game, at the end of the game, he pulled down a one-handed fadeaway interception. Another thing that, tells you how good the Redskins' day was, they found cash on the field, Mark. Literally found cash. finding money while you're winning 47-14. What more do you want? That's, a fantastic day out on the field at FedEx Field.
Well, a couple of things. First, there's a couple of things I need to address. One, the name of the place is Cold Stone. All right, we'll just throw that out there. Perry Riley, not only was that catch fantastic, it actually made NFL Network's number 2 catch of the week. And I guess they sometimes put interceptions on there. Typically, they're receptions. But it was actually the number 2 catch of the week, topped only by Jarvis Landry's doink off of the football helmet, sky shot into the air that he caught for a touchdown. So Perry Riley made number 2 in the NFL Network's play. The $15 cash on the field. In an unrelated story, apparently a guy up in the club level upper deck was $15 short, and the young woman he was with just left. It was a very sad story, because apparently that's been an issue in the past at FedEx Field.
Well, that's we might leave that one untouched. But yeah, look, $15, such an odd number as well. You could imagine, a $5 bill or a $10 bill separately floating out of someone's pocket and just blowing onto the field. But $15, really strange. But we digress. Moving on. We have a big show today, so coming up later in the show, we're going to get to some of your mailbag questions. I've got about 6 or 7 that we're going to get through, so thanks for sending them through on Twitter. But our guests today, we've got a hell of a show for you. So first up, we've got Brian McNally, our good friend from 106.7 The Fan. You've heard him on with the Junkies and things like that. He is their roving reporter. But after Brian McNally, we've also got Redskins wide receiver Jamison Crowder joining us. So that's going to be a great chat. Make sure you stick around for that. I don't need to tell you how much of a revelation he's been for the Redskins this year. Am I right, Mark? He's been fun to watch every week.
And a great week to get Jamison Crowder, too, because he scored his first NFL touchdown this week. I think he's second or third among NFL rookies in receptions this year.
Yep.
Really done as much as he could. I mean, I don't think anyone can make up for the impact Deshaun Jackson potentially could have on this team, but he's done a good job of mitigating that. And I'm really excited to have him on the podcast.
And I'll tell you what I like most about Jamison Crowder. Whenever he has the balls in his hands, he knows exactly where those first down chains are. Like, he just has an innate ability to get first downs. And I think there is a stat floating around where he's either second or even first in the NFL among rookies for first down reception. So we'll ask him about that. But before we speak to Jamison, we're going to speak to Brian McNally from 106.7 The Fan. He's always a great and very insightful guest. So let's get to him now. So we mentioned it previously, but our guest today, returning for his second appearance on the show this year, is none other than Brian McNally from 106.7 The Fan. You've heard him on the Junkies. You've seen his articles around the place. He's one of the busiest guys in the DC sports media, I think. Is there a sport or a team that you haven't covered at some point, Brian?
Good question, Chad. Probably not at this point. I think I've pretty much checked off every box. Maybe there's something somewhere, maybe a college team, but not. I've pretty much covered everything. I'll be at Georgetown, Maryland tonight if you're interested. I'll be at a college basketball game tonight. So it's our one
pretty big
one day off of the week.
Maybe Washington has a roller derby team you haven't covered. I don't know.
Maybe,
there's probably a roller derby team somewhere kicking around somewhere. I'll find them if they do. I'll find them and we'll go cover that too.
I'm sure you would, but we've brought you on to talk Redskins, obviously, and a fun week to talk Redskins after that 47-14 blowout, McNally. It was a blowout of the New Orleans Saints. And Mark and myself in the lead-in before we got you on talked about, obviously it was great for the Redskins to score 47 points, but to hold New Orleans, Drew Brees, to 14 points, that's huge in itself. That was a great effort from the defense as well. Was that, what impressed you most on that day, the defense or the offense?
Probably the offense still, just because of how they carved up New Orleans. I mean, just the overall kind of dominance there. I mean, the numbers were staggering. The scoring on 6 consecutive drives, I think for the first time in a game in 14 years, most yards in a game since 1991. I mean, that's heady stuff. Even acknowledging that the Saints are pretty much a train wreck defensively, and I believe eventually yesterday admitted to firing Rob Ryan, their defensive coordinator. Although that seemed like it was going to happen and then didn't, and then was going to happen, and I think eventually they did. So the Redskins, were taking advantage of a group that's not very good on defense. So we can all acknowledge that. At the same time, the numbers there were stuff we haven't seen in a long, long time from them. So the offense probably still more, but Chad, you're right. I mean, that defensively, that was a very, very good performance. I mean, they did much better against the run, save for the big play, and that was not a good one. The Mark Ingram 70-yard run is still an issue. Tackling can still be an issue at times. But overall, they were a better tackling team, I thought. And, they had that key kind of stop early in the third quarter on the Saints' first drive when they were kind of moving the ball a little bit. They stopped them twice on third and short and fourth and short, and managed to turn the ball over. And that was really kind of the end for the Saints. They didn't have much of a chance after that. It was an impressive overall performance. But there's still defensively, I think, some things that are going to linger. I'm not sure how sustainable that performance was, but it was an improvement and against a really good offense. So I think you tease the positives out of it and go from there.
Yeah, I thought that third one and fourth one was kind of took the will out from Carolina a little bit. I do want to address Kirk Cousins briefly. This is now 3 weeks in a row that at least 2.5 of the last 3 games, he's looked pretty good. And a lot of people have said, yeah, but you're doing it against New Orleans. Well, if it was so easy to throw 4 touchdown passes and have a perfect quarterback rating against any defense, why has no Redskin quarterback ever done it before? I get that New Orleans isn't good, and that should be part of the narrative, but why is there a need by certain parts of the fan base to put down anything Kirk Cousins does?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain amount of polarization there just based on the quarterback situation. We all know that Robert Griffin III will still have his supporters and people who think the organization still should have given him another chance. For the Cousins fans, it's validation, I think, a little bit that Jay Gruden made the right call, the right decision. I still think I knew it would happen, but I was laughing a little bit because I knew the contract stuff would come up immediately after that game. And I get it. I get why it happened. But, Kirk has to put together a solid second half of football. It can't just be 3 games in a row. There's got to be games against these two coming up are perfect. On the road against Carolina, an undefeated team. At home against the Giants in what either way will be a huge game and a swing game in the NFC East. Those 2 games are a chance for him to really solidify what he's done the last 3 weeks, to really build on it. If he can do that, then all that contract talk and extension stuff becomes really, really legitimate to me. If he doesn't, I mean, then to me the evaluation process isn't stopping. I mean, you don't just cut it off after 3 good games. He was on a roller coaster most of the early part of the season. Now he's built himself a little bit of a nest egg where he's got a couple good performances in a row. He's got to build on it, though. He can't really afford to backslide. Or the talk of an extension and getting him, keeping him here at least a couple of years is going to ring hollow if he can't.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, early this week we've seen how, and I'm not making this comparison in terms of Kirk Cousins is like these quarterbacks, but we've seen how giving a quarterback a new contract based off a small window or a small sample of play has backfired on teams like St. Louis with Foles, and, now Bradford's hurt. He's got a whale of a contract. And, I don't think Scott McCloughan or Kirk Cousins, it's in either side's best interest to get a contract signed soon. I think you're exactly right, play out the season, and in that sort of 6 to 8 week window that the team has to sign him before he actually hits the open market, I think that's when we'll see the teams really do a bit of negotiating. But let's move on, because I want to talk about how Kirk Cousins started that game, because as Mark mentioned, he's played 2.5 good games in a row now, referencing that against Tampa Bay, his first half was actually pretty poor. As good as he was in the second half, his first half wasn't good. Out of the blocks this week, he came out on fire. The Redskins started with their ball on the 4-yard line in their own territory, and he drove the team down with a 10-play, 96-yard touchdown drive. I think I saw a stat that was the longest Redskins scoring drive since December 2000. So in 15 years, we haven't had a drive like that. And that was a hell of a drive. And it came on the back of familiar faces: Alfred Morris, Pierre Garçon, Jordan Reed. We didn't see any Jamison Crowder touches on that drive. We didn't see any Matt Jones touches on that drive. It was a bit of the old gang back together, wasn't it, McNally?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Deshaun Jackson had the big catch, was the 42-yarder. I thought a huge play, honestly, Chad, was right before that. The one play before the Deshaun Jackson pass got them out of the shadow of their own goal line. Cousins dropped back to throw, and Haoli Kikaha from the Saints beat Trent Williams clean. He just went right around him, the rookie linebacker. But yeah, I saw him play at the Senior Bowl. He's a really good pass rusher.
He is. Fun name to say as well.
Tough name to say. The Senior Bowl pronunciation guy was a huge help there. But he went right around Trent and beat him clean. And Kirk had to kind of sense that pressure. He stepped up a little bit in the pocket, took a little step to avoid pressure up the middle, and then got rid of the ball just as Kikaha grabbed his legs and was going to pull him down. It would have been a safety if he'd waited probably even half a second. And it was just a little 4-yard dump off to Alfred Morris, but it kept the drive alive. It was a positive play. It got them a little bit of breathing room. And then on the next play, he drops just a beauty of the ball into Deshaun Jackson. So the 42-yard game, it kind of made that whole thing possible. And I thought that was kind of a telling little play, a little subtle play that avoided, maybe what happened to them in the Giants game, where you have a disaster early and the game sort of turns against you. Kirk managed to avoid that, didn't panic, and then set himself up to have a really, really nice opening drive and kind of set the tone really for the entire game for the offense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't want to I don't want to linger too long because I want to talk about the Carolina game some, but I think the Redskins win over New Orleans is really only half the story of the day if you're a Redskins fan. The fact that as the Redskins game, really, I didn't even watch the last 4 or 5 minutes of the Redskins game because I was watching the Cowboys game and I was watching the Eagles game, and of course later the Giants lose too. So honestly, I understand that in 2013 there was another day like this where the Redskins beat the Raiders and all the other NFC East teams lost, but not in this kind of agonizing fashion. And that Redskin team was 0-3 going into that day, so I didn't get the same feeling of joy and happiness that I got on this day. So, I mean, as a Redskin fan, were you focusing on those other games at all, or were you just so focused on the Redskin game because of your responsibilities? Because I think part of the story of the day is the fact that all the other NFC teams lost in painful fashion.
Yeah, no, it was, if I remember the timing of it right, I think the Eagles game wasn't quite over when we went when the Redskins game ended, we went down to the locker room. I think the Eagles game ended either while we were in the room or while we were waiting for Jay Gruden. So somebody said to him, just mentioned offhand the score and that the Eagles had lost. I think he just kind of nodded his head and said, good, which got a chuckle from everybody. And then the Cowboys game, I think was already in hand by then. I think people knew before even going down. I think they were an afternoon game. Right now, I'm blanking on the.
No, they were 1 o'clock. They were 1 o'clock game also, and it did end before the Redskins game ended. But essentially the Redskins game was over before the Cowboys game ended. But you know what I'm saying there.
And then the Giants game was fascinating. I mean, pretty much the entire press box stopped working for about 30 minutes there.
Right.
As we because that was later. That was about 7:30, somewhere in there. So most people would either file their stories or had a little bit of time before their stories were due in. And so a big crowd of us just started watching the end of that game. And that was fascinating, just watching the time management, how the Giants just kind of managed to leave Tom Brady a little too much. They probably could have done a little better job there at the end. We've seen that from them before this year. And that's the margin for error, guys. I mean, it was you're absolutely right. It was a pretty devastating loss. I mean, Giants are kind of lucky they have a bye this week to kind of shake that off, because that's one of those that can linger and that can last and make you make you start questioning yourself. And remember, their first 2 weeks of the year, right? They lost in similar fashion, and I think they look at the division and say, we are easily the best team, and yet we're 5-5, and we have to go to Washington in 2 weeks. And that'll probably be a game for first place, or at least a huge game either way. And to me, that's a huge deal. I mean, the rest of the division, nobody wants to run away with it. The Giants could have; they've come the closest. but certainly the Cowboys are a mess right now. The Romo injury just derailed their season, and the Eagles can't get out of their own way, and now have their own injury issues at quarterback. So it's incredible as that sounds, and it's not like I think the Redskins roster is built, long term, or this is a team that can go deep into the playoffs, but they certainly have a legitimate shot at a division title if they can show well here in the next 2 weeks.
Well, before we talk about this week's huge game against Carolina, one last question about the New Orleans game. I know, as you said, you're around the press box, you're in the locker room after the game. Did anyone from the NFL League come down and, penalize the Redskins for dressing up Darrelle Revis in Perry Riley's uniform? Because that dude has never played that good in pass coverage in his entire life until this game. I mean, he had a one-handed fadeaway interception whilst being interfered with. Again, what the hell, McNally? It's Perry Riley. We've never seen that.
I talked to him after the game, Chad. I've said this on our radio station a couple times yesterday, but he's a pretty proud guy. Perry's interesting. People don't really know a ton about him, and that's by design. He's not a guy who loves talking to the media, and it's weird because he's really, really insightful when he does. He's really fun to talk to. You always walk away thinking, wow, I kind of learned a little bit about some things. But he is self-aware too, and he knows what people say about him in coverage, that he's never been a strength, and that he was pretty much awful at it last year, and has not has obviously struggled with it this year as well. So he's aware of that, and I think he took a little extra pride in being able to have a game like that. Because you're right, it started almost from the beginning where he dropped into coverage and knocked down a pass intended for Colston. It was really kind of a nice play. And at the time you think, okay, that was a nice little play. He kind of read it and dropped, and Drew Brees kind of forced a pass in there. But the interception was beautiful, and he got down the field too. It's not like he was, it was almost the exact play. It clearly the Saints saw the Patriots game and said, okay, we can take care of this guy in coverage, and we'll get the tight end on him. It'll be an easy touchdown, and he ran right with Ben Watson. So great play and a great game. And need more of that from Perry Riley. He's usually pretty reliable in the run game. Still had his struggles with missed tackles, as kind of they all have early this year, but they need him to play at that level. And I know he's got the calf injury earlier in the year. I'm sure that's lingering a little bit. He didn't want to admit it, but you can tell he's not exactly playing pain-free. But teams are going to continue to take advantage of him, and he needed a game like that to put something on film to say, hey, I can still play this game a little bit. And I'd almost call him a little defiant afterwards, saying exactly that. I can still play. I know I can play. I've just got to be better. And he certainly was good. Certainly was good last week.
Well, it was excellent to see about 20 of his teammates mob him when he came up with that ball. I mean, the bench is basically cleared on the Redskins side of the field. So, obviously, he's a guy who is well liked by his teammates, and they got around him after that, which is always nice to see. But let's move on to this week's game against Carolina, because before we got you on, I mentioned a tweet that I'd sent out about 5 minutes after the final siren of the New Orleans game, where I said, I have an irrational gut feeling that the Redskins can end Carolina's undefeated streak this week. McNally, how insane am I? Is that just outside the realm of possibility?
I don't think it is. I mean, honestly, Chad, this isn't New England. This isn't one of those issues where you think the Panthers have elite talent. I mean, they're a very good team. They've won they win close games. I mean, that's as simple as that. I mean, if you're just going down the list, they won at Seattle by 4. They beat the Texans by a touchdown. They beat the Saints by 5. I don't really see any blowouts here. They did score 37 against the Packers, so that was impressive, and they kind of throttled the Titans last week. So they make their money on defense. Certainly Cam Newton is a matchup nightmare for almost any team, and that's kind of has to make you concerned as a Redskins fan trying to think about the way the run defense is played, and then having to add in a mobile quarterback who can not just make plays with his legs, but run you over as a defender, who's big enough to be a defensive end at some point. I mean, Cam's just a massive guy. So, it's not a team that wins pretty, So that gives you some hope there that maybe if you can find a way to, shut them down offensively, maybe keep Cam in check, that you can have a puncher's chance of winning a game like this. I mean, the Redskins offense has to feel confident, certainly going into it. It's a different level. I mean, defensively, the Carolina is just a way different level than New Orleans is. But, I don't think it's out of bounds to think somehow the Redskins can find a way to win. It's unlikely, and certainly Carolina will be favored by a decent margin. But on the road, I think the Redskins coming off this game at least will feel decent about their chances of maybe stealing one. It's again a low pressure game, kind of like the New England game. No one expects them to win, but this is one I think they have a little better. The matchup is a little better for the way they want to play anyway.
So this week you're saying that the Redskins are Holly Holm and Carolina is Ronda Rousey?
Nice reference.
I'm topical.
That is pretty damn topical right there. I don't think the Redskins will be double punching Cam Newton in the face as he's lying unconscious on the field. I'm pretty positive that won't happen, but maybe they can find a way to get a kick in there and knock Carolina senseless for a few minutes and get out of there with the win. We'll see.
Pretty sure punching Cam while he's on the ground would be a penalty. The Redskins,
I think they'd get 17 flags on that play.
Yeah.
The no fun league.
Right. The Redskins are 0-2 against Cam Newton as a professional. I've noticed a lot this week. Well, and it's really been for a few weeks. It started a couple of weeks ago when people put out Cam Newton's numbers and laid them against Colin Kaepernick's numbers. And a lot of people have sort of been poo-pooing what Cam Newton is doing. And I say to those people, watch the games. His impact on this team is undeniable. He lost his number one receiver in preseason. He's got Greg Olsen, who is a top-flight tight end. I mean, no doubt about it. And Jonathan Stewart's a nice running back, but he's really kind of just a guy, and there's nothing at receiver. So I would like to ask these people, and I'll ask you now, not putting you in this group with the people that are saying this about Cam Newton, exactly what is Carolina doing to be 9-0 if it's not Cam Newton? Because there's really not a lot else on that offense.
Yeah, I mean, he's not working with the weapons other people have, and that kind of shows you how good he is himself, and how much the dynamic changes when you go up against a quarterback like that. Like I said, he's not Robert Griffin III. He's not a guy that could win matchups just with his legs. He can run over you. I mean, it's like having a running back at quarterback. He makes physically he holds up. He's just that big. And has a nice passing touch and can make things happen. Like you said, his weapons aren't exactly what you think of and say, this is an incredible offense or anything like that. But they don't have to be. That's maybe the beauty of the Panthers is that they play so well defensively. They're so defensively sound that they don't have to have their offense be next level. They can do just enough and give themselves a chance to win week out and week out, and week in and week out, and that's what they've done. I mean, do I think they're a 9-0 team? Do I think they're that good? No, I don't think they're that good, and so they're ripe for being beat. We saw the Bengals lose yesterday, right, at home to the Texans, so it can happen. I think the Redskins are a better team obviously than Houston. There's no reason they can't go on the road and win. Like I said, unlikely maybe, and they certainly won't. No one will pick them to do it. But I just think the matchup is better. I just like the style of play a little bit better for what the Redskins want to be to give them a chance. But full credit to Carolina for being a kind of a team that built on what they did last year. People kind of made fun of them a little bit for winning a bad division, but kind of showed that they're maybe better than, not just better than people think, but that they had enough pieces in place that they could be a legitimate contender to win the NFC.
And you know what? Vegas is recognizing that Cam Newton is second outright favorite for the MVP behind only Tom Brady, which is pretty lofty company for Cam to be in.
That's huge. Absolutely. I know I've seen some people kind of ding his MVP chances and say, kind of try to, as you said, Mark, kind of try to poo-poo it a little bit. But I mean, to me, given what he's working with on that side of the ball, he has to be in that mix. And obviously, Brady's been incredible, so you probably give him the nod. But Cam and should be right there with him. He's going to be a headache for the Redskins this week. Like you said, he's gotten them a couple times in his career, so we'll see if they can concoct something to take him away and make some of those other guys beat him.
Well, at the very least, the Redskins will be going into Carolina full of confidence, and thankfully, after 5 weeks of poor ground game, the running game for the Redskins seems to be back on track, and it's probably no coincidence. At least I don't think it's a coincidence, McNally, that Darrell Young is starting to feature again. We saw him out there for way more snaps this week than we've seen in the past month, and Alfred Morris, especially in the first half, was running behind him, and instead of getting tackled for a 2-yard gain, he was getting those 5-6 yard gains that we've seen Alfred Morris get for the past 3 or 4 years. So do you think the Redskins are going to try to maintain that kind of game plan this week against Carolina, just stick to the plan and hope it works, or do you expect some sort of weird changes going into this Carolina game just based on how good their run defense is?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure they could have the same success they had with the screen game that they had against New Orleans. That seemed to be a concentrated plan as well to kind of take advantage of some things they do. I think Darrell was on the field for, I want to say 8 or 9 snaps, Chad, something like that. Certainly had a little bit of an impact, and we saw
that's also, more than 0.
Yeah, it's more than 0 for him. He's, I'm sure, thrilled with that. And also we saw a lot of Tom Compton as well, kind of in that, as the extra blocker. It kind of reminded me early of the season when they used so many of those 3 tight end sets, right, against St. Louis and Miami, that were so effective and that they kind of got away from a little bit. So, yeah, I think you will see a little bit more of that. It's not going to be easy to run against Carolina, obviously. But having said that, it's interesting. Their strength is almost from the back end. They're so good in the secondary that teams find it hard to throw against them. So that's an intriguing matchup to me for the Redskins. They've kind of gone up here. They've butted heads with 3 of the best run defenses in the league the last month in the Patriots, Falcons, and Jets to go up against one of the top secondaries. And I'm intrigued to see how their receivers handle that, how Kirk Cousins handles that, what that lets Carolina do in terms of pressure, because as we've seen, we finally saw for the first time in a couple weeks, the Saints got to Kirk a little bit. I think they had 3 sacks. I don't think that has happened all season, if I'm not correct.
No, you are correct.
I saw you put it out, Chad, the lowest sack percentage, right? 2.8%.
Yep, going into the week.
Going into the week. So it had been a strength for them. But it looked like Kirk was taking a little bit longer maybe to make decisions this week, probably on purpose, knowing that the opportunities would be there against the Saints. Those may not be there against Carolina. He may not have that luxury at that time. So I'm intrigued to see how the Redskins handle that, what the Panthers do in terms of blitz packages and how they put pressure on Kirk and make him make decisions quick, but bad decisions quick. How do they force him into that the way maybe the Giants did early in the season? So I'm intrigued by the matchup on that side of the ball. But I think you're right. Getting the run game keeping it going is kind of critical now. Jay Gruden said, famously here last week, I don't need 200 yards. I don't need 25 carries for 200. I need 100 on 25, and I can make the rest work. And I think that's what the Redskins are looking for again this week. Like to see the broken tackles, right? Alfred was finally getting his legs moving enough that he could break some tackles, get some extra yards after contact. Wasn't getting hit in the backfield as much. All that's got to continue if they want to hope to build on what they did here against the Saints this week.
Yeah, last question from me. The Redskins have had, actually, for the first time I can remember in a while, a lot of success at home. Lost the opener to Miami, but have won every home game since. The opposite side of that coin is they've lost every road game this year. They're playing Carolina on the road this week. Carolina for many years was Redskin country. Before they started putting teams down there. Do you expect this week in Carolina, while it is a road game against a very good team, you expect to see a lot of burgundy and gold in the stands? And what are your thoughts on that and the Redskins' struggles on the road this year? Is it just that they've been playing much better teams on the road?
I do think that's part of it. They've had those are some tough road games. At New England, at the Giants, at the Jets. I do
Atlanta.
think that's played. Yeah, at Atlanta, and then they almost won. They had a chance to win that game. They had the ball in overtime. Obviously, got the pick 6 for the touchdown, but had a chance. Were competitive in that game. Less so maybe in the other 3, although they certainly led the Jets at halftime at least. So that intrigues me a little bit. If that's such a tough road schedule. I don't know. They it almost doesn't matter. They have to find a way to win one. If they're going to win the division, there's going to have to be a road game that they steal. You can't just hope you pick off the Chicago game and then win the rest of your home games. You're going to have to get Chicago, maybe win at Philly. You're going to have to find a way to get some of these, and they could take a lot of pressure off themselves. And really, if they win this game, put a ton of pressure on the rest of the division, because the rest of the division sitting back saying, all right, that's a loss for the Redskins. If you steal a game like that, much like the Giants, if they had beaten the Patriots, the rest of the division would have sagged a little bit like, oh, okay, this isn't going to be that easy. You steal a game at Carolina, you're going to put a ton of pressure on the other teams. And then to your point, every time the Redskins play in the South, the traditional South, any southern city, we've seen huge crowds. And it's usually not people who travel. It's usually people who live in that area that whose parents grew up rooting for the Redskins because there wasn't a team in those areas. We've seen it in playoff games in Tampa where the Redskins had 20,000 people in the stands. And then we've seen it certainly 2 of the last 3 years they played at Atlanta. We've seen, you're looking at a good 8, 9, 10,000 people in the stands that are rooting for the Redskins. That's a huge advantage. It's probably the only DC sports team that gets that advantage. And I think Carolina will be, even because it's closer to home, should be even more like that. Now, it might be harder for them to fight off Panthers fans for tickets, but especially given how well they're playing. So I'm not sure exactly how big the road contingent will be, but I expect to see a pretty sizable Redskin presence there, which will, at least lessen what you'll see in terms of a road advantage than maybe what's typical in Philly or New York or Boston, some of the bigger eastern cities where you just don't see that road presence as much. We've seen it in Atlanta. I expect to see a pretty good crowd in Charlotte supporting the Redskins.
Well, we know that amongst that crowd will be yourself. You obviously travel with the team and are going down to Carolina, and I know that that's one of the trips you're looking forward to. It's a good little away trip. Maybe not as good as places like Chicago for a reporter, but still pretty good. So, McNally, let's leave it there. You've been an absolute treasure to have on, like you are every time we talk to you. You bring amazing insights. What sort of stuff have you got coming up for Redskins fans this week?
Yeah, well, I'm going to actually probably today do that Perry Riley interview. I talked to him pretty extensively on Sunday, so I'd like to kind of delve into his game a little bit more. We're going to talk about that. Certainly have on the website, going to have a Carolina preview later in the week, kind of examine why they've been as good as they have been and what the Redskins can look forward to there. And then the week gets cranking tomorrow. We'll see who's out at practice with injury stuff. It looks like, for the most part, they came out of that game unscathed, which is a good thing. So tomorrow you should see most of the guys out there. Maybe Jason Hatcher will get his typical Wednesday day off to
his old man day off.
Yeah,
right.
The old man day off and save those knees a little bit. But for the most part, they came out of that game healthy. So less of those things to monitor at this point in the season, which is a good thing for the Redskins. God knows they've had their injury issues already this year, more than enough.
Absolutely have.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, McNally, we thank you for coming on again. Redskins fans on Twitter, make sure you get around Brian McNally. He is at bmcnally14. I have no idea what the 14 stands for. I'm assuming it's a lucky number or something, McNally.
It's your birthday, July 14th,
Hey.
So I always tag myself with 14, favorite number.
Nice. All right, well, thanks once again for coming on today, sir. Always a pleasure.
Chad, Mark, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
All right, wasting no time, let's go straight from our chat with Brian to our chat with Redskins rookie wide receiver Jamison Crowder. So absolutely thrilled to have on the Redskins Capital Connection podcast today rookie wide receiver Jamison Crowder, who has been killing it for the Redskins lately. Jamison, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Can't complain. Happy to be here. Just finished up a great day of practice. Looking forward to tomorrow.
Well, let's talk about practices, because last week it was reported that the Redskins had really tough and really competitive practices, and Redskins fans saw the dividends of that against New Orleans, where we absolutely whooped their butts. How's practice today? How you feeling?
I felt like today was, we really had the same intensity and enthusiasm and energy that we, started out with last Wednesday. And that obviously paid off for us this past Sunday. So I felt like today was, a good day. I felt like we had a really good practice and, a great way to start off the week in preparations for the Panthers this weekend.
Hey, Jamison, Coach Gruden said in his press conference today there were a few skirmishes in practice today. Were you involved in any of those?
Nah, not at all. I wasn't involved. That's just how it is. Once you have a lot of competitive guys on this team.
Sure.
And sometimes the players, competitive nature just takes over, and things can kind of get a little bit heated. But at the end of the day, we still our teammates, and whatever happens at practice, it stays on the practice field. And once everything gets settled, everything is fine.
Well, I mean, you obviously grew up in North Carolina, and I remember speaking to you briefly at training camp this year, and you did say that Steve Smith was a player you spent a lot of time watching. He's a famous hothead. So, I mean, whilst you're still a rookie and you're probably looking to keep your head down, is it safe to say that, in future years, if there's practice skirmishes, your name may be involved?
It depends on, if it's something that's involving me. I'm definitely not just gonna go looking for, little battles, little fights to get into at practice. I just try to keep my cool though, and just, be who I am. And, I just try to practice hard, and, it may happen or it may not happen. So,
yeah.
I'm just going, I'm just going to, be myself and, just keep doing what I do.
Well, as I just said, you grew up in North Carolina, so a bit of a homecoming for you this week. You got a lot of friends and family looking for tickets to come see you play?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's very exciting for me. Go back to North Carolina and be able to play, and definitely got a lot of support down in that area. A lot of family, a lot of friends trying to make the game. Got a few family members going to be tailgating and stuff like that. So, it's going to be an exciting week for me. I can't wait to go down there and play in front of my friends and family, and get to see some of my family as well. In a little bit of time I get to see them, but like I said, it's definitely going to be exciting, and I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, Jamison, in this week's game, you've got 42 catches on the season, which I think is second among rookies in the NFL this year. But in this week's game, you caught your first touchdown pass. Two-part question. One, how did that feel? And when you caught it, you took a pretty good shot right there as you got it. Does the pain go away on those kind of shots when you catch a touchdown pass?
It was a pretty nice tackle, pretty good hit. I just think, when you're in the game, you don't really feel it. Like, I didn't really feel the hit, even though if you look at it on tape and on film, it looks like it's a pretty big hit, in which it was, but, I didn't feel anything. I guess it's just, just adrenaline be flowing during the game and whatnot. So I didn't feel the hit at all. I took the hit and I got up, and I was just happy that I had scored, my first touchdown. I was just happy that I was able to, contribute to the team and help put points on the board.
Well, I mean, that was your first touchdown, and you may or may not know this. I don't know if anyone inside that building has told you yet, but if you score another touchdown this week, you'll be the first Redskins rookie to record a receiving touchdown in back-to-back games since Chris Cooley, which is fairly lofty company you could find yourself in there, man.
Yeah. Every time I go out on the field, I'm hoping I can, get a touchdown. It's tough. It's tough to score in this league, but that's what I'm definitely aiming for. What would be better? Being able to go back home, play in front of my friends and family, and then get a touchdown. So hopefully I can do that.
Yeah. Now you seem to be developing a really strong rapport with Kirk Cousins. I mean, that touchdown catch you had this week, Cousins was already releasing that ball before you'd fully broken on your route. He knew where you were going to be. And I think in 4 of the last 6 games, you've either led the team in receptions or tied the team for receptions. So what's it been like getting into a rhythm with Kirk Cousins? Because I remember you and him during camp were both working with the twos, and now here you are both starting, which has got to be fantastic.
Right. It's been, it's definitely been exciting, just to be able to, be out there with Kurt. Like you said, me and Kurt had a somewhat of a connection way back during camp. Working with the twos, there was a lot of plays and a lot of situations where, me and Kurt would, he would find me on a nice pass and I'll be there to make the play. So, and then now it's kind of carrying over into the ball game. So, like I said earlier, I'm just trying to, do what I can to help out the team, to be a contribution to the team. And, I think that me and Kirk's, connection is definitely getting better. So I hopefully that will continue to build as we go along with the season.
Yeah, the Redskins have used you a lot on bubble screens and drag routes this year, and trying to take advantage of you catching the ball and running with it using your speed. One, how close are you to breaking one of those? Because you came real close this past week to breaking one for a second touchdown in that game. And two, are you kind of lobbying the Redskins to take advantage of your speed and have you run some of those go routes that Deshaun gets to run?
Yeah, man. I mean, on that screen pass, I was definitely, disappointed in myself. I felt like, looking back at that film yesterday, I felt like I would have broke to the right a little bit. I possibly could have scored, my second touchdown. But
right.
I'm just trying to here. I'm one of the guys they have, running a lot of shallow routes, shallow cross routes. So I'm just trying to, do my role and do it the best I can. Referring to, D-Jack, D-Jack always going to be the deep guy, and that's pretty much his job, his duty. And, he's just not getting back into the swing of things, being that this was on his second game back. So, hopefully we can, hook up with D-Jack on some more deep shots. And, I just continue to, do what I can on the underneath routes and everything.
Well, I mean, you're making those underneath routes look like exciting every time because you do look like you're a threat to take it to the house every time. But this week, it's fair to say that the Panthers probably represent the toughest defense the Redskins have on their schedule for 2015. And yet, coming off the big win against the Saints, you guys will no doubt be full of confidence. Can you tell us a bit about your personal approach to the game this week?
My personal approach, it's the same. Just make sure that I, watch my film, watch their DBs, watch their defense, watch their corners and everything. Nothing really changed. I'm just going to, make sure, I keep practicing great habits and, make sure I have a good week of practice. And then, just let Sunday take care of itself. I want to make sure that I'm prepared as possible for the game. And, we know that it's a challenge going against an undefeated team. And we knowing that, their defense, they have, one of the top defenses in this league. So we know it's a great challenge for us. But personally, I'm just making sure that I take care of what I need to take care of this week, and I just go into the game as prepared as possible.
47 points, and 40 of them offensive against the Saints this week. That's an amazing accomplishment in the NFL. A lot of people talked this week, said, the Saints aren't that good of a defense. If you could talk briefly about, every defense in the NFL, every player is a good player. Can you talk about how hard it is to score points in the NFL and how impressive something like what you guys did this past Sunday was?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. It's a challenge every week, no matter, what a team's record may show or, what some stats may show, it's always tough, going against professional players. Like you said, everybody that's in this NFL, in this league, is a good player. So, being able to score 40 points on offense, that just shows, that we really put it together last week. Offensively, we had some really good drives. We was able to run the ball, pass the ball. So, that just kind of goes to show the weapons that we have in this offense. And if we can, stay consistent and build on what we did last week, then, we can be a really good offense. We can be one of the top offenses in this league.
All right, last question before we let you go, Jamison. There's been a little bit of noise, well, more than a little bit of noise in the media this week about Cam Newton's dancing after scoring against the Titans. It seems that none of the Redskins players care about that, which is perfect because I don't care about it really either. But tell us, if you score this week, are you going to bust out some moves for us?
I don't know. First, I got to get into the end zone. So, if I'm able to get a touchdown this week, I don't know what I'm going to do, honestly. You're
not one of the guys who prepares some moves?
Nah, I don't really dance too much. I'm just a laid-back, chill type of guy. So, if I'm able to score, I probably won't do too much. It's probably, obviously I get excited, but, I probably won't do no dance moves or anything like that.
Well, Jamison, as we mentioned at the top, you're absolutely killing it this year. Mark is right. You are first in the NFC, second in the NFL in receptions amongst rookies. You're second in the NFC and third in the NFL in receiving yards amongst rookies. I think you lead the NFL in first down catches amongst rookies. You're having a great year. Redskins fans can rightly be excited about what you bring to this team. Keep killing it all year, man, and we really appreciate you taking the time out to have a chat with us today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for joining us, Jamison.
All right. Yes, sir. No problem.
Yeah, that's another week of fantastic insights here on the Redskins Capital Connection. I could get used to this, Chad, getting the kind of guests we're getting and the kind of insights we're getting. Really the sort of thing that's the nice thing about social media and the way everyone's in contact is that you're getting this information from multiple sources, multiple ways, and on your own schedule. And I'm glad we're able to bring that to you as part of the Redskins Capital Connection.
And a huge thanks needs to go to our fans, like our listeners. I shouldn't say fans, our listeners, because without you guys and without, the sort of success that we've had as a young podcast, we wouldn't get the caliber of guests that we do get on. So thank you, every listener out there, for tuning in every week. It means the world to us. It lets us do what we want to do. So we are going to get to some of your questions this week. Every couple of weeks, we do a bit of a listener mailbag, a Q&A session. So I put out the call pretty late this week. I put it out Monday morning to send through some questions, but we got a bunch of good ones. Probably no surprises what a majority of the questions focus on, given what happened on Sunday against the New Orleans Saints. But Mark, first question to you, sir, from @JabbyDobbin. Do we extend Cousins now before he gets more expensive? Obviously, talking about the contract. What do you think?
Right. Not going to extend Cousins now, like as in this week. It's just not going to happen because you're going to need to see it against better teams and on a more consistent basis. Although I will say we're now at kind of 3 straight games where Kirk's looked pretty good. Obviously, if he plays well against Carolina and against the Giants, at that point, while he'd be more expensive than he is now, you've got to really look at it hard at that point. You can't wait to the end of the season at that point. Again, the caveat, if he plays well against these next 2 teams.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I agree with that entirely. It's one of those things where if you sign him now, and as we said with McNally, I think they won't do it until the end of the season, but if you sign him now, you're buying high. And that's not a good thing to do in any facet of life. You always sort of try to buy at the average price. So, yeah, exactly right. Next question. I'll answer this one. This comes from @BaldwinRye. Aside from the obvious Kirk contract talks, I guess he preempted what a lot of the questions would be about. He wanted to know why Keenan Robinson was benched. He didn't see that coming. BaldwinRye, Keenan was benched because he wasn't healthy. He didn't practice on Friday before the game. On Wednesday he didn't practice. On Thursday he was limited, and on Friday he was limited, and he was listed as questionable going into the game, and he just sat. It wasn't a performance reason. He's just dinged up with a shoulder and neck injury, so that's why Keenan Robinson didn't play. Got to be said, Will Compton stepped in and played pretty well, and as we spoke about with McNally, Perry Riley had the game of his life as well.
Yeah, I actually think that game begs the question: why doesn't Will Compton play more? And I understand Perry Riley. I'm not saying bench Keenan Robinson. Obviously, I think Keenan Robinson, while he's been a bit up and down this year, is a guy you want on the field. I would say Will Compton, though. Certainly there needs to be a 3-man rotation at that position, unless Perry Riley's going to play like this all the time. Which and the jury. Well, actually, the jury is in on that. That's probably not going to happen. Hope it does, but it's probably not going to happen. So I think we'll see more Will Compton going forward.
Yep, I agree.
Right. So let's see. @Red_Devil1981 asks, do you think Cousins is going to be a long-term starter for the Redskins now? That's such a tough question to answer. I think the Redskins are hoping that he is. So as a result, I think they're going to try and make that happen. But you just never know. And there's a reason that people say the NFL stands for not for long. Kirk Cousins may play well this year, and then he may come in and do a Gus Farrat or someone like that who looks really good one year and then just seems to fall off the map the next. I don't think there's any such thing as a long-term starter in this league unless you're one of those 7 or 8, top-tier, borderline elite quarterbacks. But I think the Redskins' goal is to make Cousins the long-term starter, yes.
Yeah, I think he'll start next year, and for the Redskins, next year is about as long-term as we can look at. Now, whether he keeps his job throughout the year is entirely dependent on his play, because I do think the Redskins at some point during next year's draft will draft a quarterback. I don't think it'll be in the first round. I think it's going to be like we saw in Seattle with Russell Wilson, a third or fourth round quarterback who the plan is to sort of stash and let develop a little bit.
Right.
But I mean, if whoever we draft, assuming I am correct and we do draft one, if he just, outplays Kirk Cousins amazingly in, mini camp and training camp and preseason, then it's possible that a rookie will start next year. But I think the most likely thing at this stage, pending any crazy free agent moves or anything like that, is that Kirk Cousins is the Redskins starter week 1 next year.
Right. And the players like Kirk Cousins, which I think matters.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. We don't know who the coach will be next year. It might be Jay Gruden. It might not be Jay Gruden. A new GM, like we've gotten Scott McLuhan, it's not unusual for them to want to implement their own coaching staff after a while, even if they come in with an inherited coach. So, tough to say what the future holds for the Redskins across a lot of positions at the moment. But I think if you're a betting man, Vegas would have Kirk Cousins as the week 1 starter as the favorite. So next question, again a Kirk Cousins question, this one from @DC_Gabe. How do we think Kirk Cousins will do against Carolina next week? Toughest defense he's played probably all year. I mean, before the year started, we said that his first 2 weeks against the Dolphins and the Rams would probably be the toughest defenses he will play all year. But, I mean, the Dolphins weren't great and the Rams weren't great in those games in terms of their defense. The Dolphins hadn't figured out how to use Ndamukong Suh yet. They were having problems with Brent Grimes in the secondary. The Rams, they're a good defense, but the Redskins were able to run all over them, and Kirk Cousins had himself a pretty decent day that day. So it's tough. I think it's, at this point now that we know who everyone is, it's obvious that the Panthers are going to be the best defense that Kirk Cousins has played against. So if he has a good game, it's going to do his stock a huge world of good. If he struggles, and I'm not talking about if he has an absolute crap the bed day. I mean, if he just struggles like a lot of quarterbacks have done against Carolina, that's nothing against him. A lot of teams have struggled against Carolina. They're 9-0 for a reason. So I think Kirk Cousins can play well, and I think how well he plays is going to speak volumes about his level of play going forward.
Yeah, I agree with the majority of what you just said right there. I think that I tweeted out this week that going from playing the New Orleans defense to playing the Carolina defense is like going from racing a tricycle to racing a Formula One vehicle. But Carolina currently is ranked 10th in the NFL in defense. So while they are a very good defense, they're not an elite defense. And actually, St. Louis, as a defense, ranks higher than them statistically. Now, of course, as referenced earlier with the Cam Newton argument, you can't just look at statistics. You got to watch the games and see teams play. A lot of Carolina's defensive numbers that drop them to 10th are because they're leading in a lot of games, and teams have to throw on them late. I know Green Bay put up a ton of yards in the fourth quarter against them when the game was out of hand. Now, Green Bay did almost come back and tie that game up, but they didn't. And Carolina certainly is a very good defense. So, I mean, obviously, it would be shocking if Cousins, the Redskins offense, didn't struggle some this week, because that's what happens when you go from a below average, or generously below average defense to a top flight defense like Carolina.
Yep, agreed. So moving on, next question from @bench_mob. This one is for you, Mark. What do you think the top 4 draft needs are for the Redskins in next year's draft based on, the season so far?
Well, I'm going to be very pass rush focused on this. I think inside linebacker will be a draft need. This might not be the most popular week to bring that up because we got pretty good play from the inside linebackers, but I think that's going to be a top need. I think a pass rusher in the 3-4 on the defensive line. I don't think we're getting a lot out of the defensive ends. Even Jason Hatcher's been a little bit disappointing from a pass rushing perspective this year. He's been pretty good overall, so I'm going to say that. Obviously, on the offensive line, I think the center position is a tremendous position of need for this team. And even though, we've got Jordan Reed and Niles Paul is coming back, wouldn't be surprised in this offense to see tight end in there. I'm kind of torn on tight end or even saying the quarterback position. If the quarterback position is in that top 4, even though I think Cousins will start next year, RG3 is not going to be back in my opinion. And who knows if they're going to hang on to Colt McCoy for another year as the backup.
Yep, I agree with everything you've just said. I would add wide receiver. At the moment, I think the Redskins will target a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds of the draft, just because I'm not entirely positive that both Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson will still be here next year. So I think the Redskins will look for a big possession type of wide receiver that we know Scott McLuhan likes. So, next question. This one's directed to me from @LionFireVA. Chad, are you coming to Redskins training camp next off season? Hope so. I loved coming out this year. It's a long way to go. It's not cheap, obviously, to fly from Australia to Richmond, but it's definitely something I'd like to plan to do, Lion Fire. So fingers crossed, and I don't know, maybe I'll start a Kickstarter to get some help, but probably not.
Everyone's got a GoFundMe page. Why don't you just throw one out there?
Yeah, exactly.
Please send me to Redskins training camp.
Yep. And the very last question, this one comes from @AussieAudible. This one was in response to my game grades that I tweet out after every Redskins game. So I don't put these in an article. What I do is I put these in a tweet where each week I tweet out, A's to F's game grades for individual Redskins players. And Aussie Audible asked, do you give out A+? Because I gave Kirk Cousins an A. Not usually. I mean, you have to do something exceptional to get an A+. And I think Kirk Cousins had himself a hell of a game, and he deserves an A rating. But let's not forget, he did throw, one near interception when he was targeting Tom Compton for some reason. He did throw one pick that was called back because of a penalty. But, it's not as if every single ball that left his hands was pinpoint accurate. He had a great game. There are a couple of passes that weren't great, which is why he's an A and not an A+.
Well, this cracks me up how nitpicky fans can be. Like, how can you look at a grade and say, an A? That's all. Okay, so I don't know if you give pluses or not. I guess you just said someone has to do something exceptional. And certainly, Kirk did not have a perfect game other than by the QB rating system. I don't understand that. How can you have a perfect QB rating when you have 5 incompletions? Like, that's the definition of not perfect. Okay, but regardless, he had a fantastic game, and I'm not going to nitpick it.
You have to have a degree in advanced mathematics to understand that's the QB rating formula. But you know what? Speaking of individual player ratings, Mark, you have 3-2-1 votes to do, and you get to do them after a fun as hell game. I'm very jealous of you.
Yeah, this is a good week to do it. Most weeks I've been fishing in a barren pond, but except for the last time. But this week, I mean, it is just chock full of fish to choose from, to the point that as much as the fan in me wants to give Alfred Morris a spot in this 3-2-1, he did not make it this week. And let's face it, that was actually the sort of game that by Alfred Morris standards, we see 4 or 5 times a year most years. So really just maybe a slightly above average performance, if not average by Alfred Morris standards, although very good this year. It's probably his second best game of the season, but he did not make it. The 3 is pretty obvious, and this is the 3rd week in a row, and out of a possible 9 points in 3 weeks, Chad, Kirk Cousins is going to have 8. Okay, because he's getting the 3 this week. A lot of people said, well, there was 260 yards run after catch, and he was playing a terrible defense. Look, all those things are true. But if it was so simple to throw 4 touchdown passes and get a perfect quarterback rating, how come people don't do it on a regular basis against bad defenses? It's a phenomenal performance. And by the way, 260 yards after catch, like the quarterback has nothing to do with that. Okay, the pass he threw to Chris Thompson, he hit him perfectly in stride, allowing Chris Thompson to run for an additional 20 yards. All right, yes, I understand Matt Jones made a lot of a couple of screen passes, and so did Jamison Crowder, on one of those wide receiver screens they threw to him. But the quarterback has something to do with yak. He does. So let's not just totally say, oh, well, the majority of those yards were run after catch, and Kirk Cousins shouldn't get any credit for that. He absolutely should. All right, so he's the 3. The 2 is going to be Matt Jones. Now, I don't remember. I haven't checked the score on the website. Has he appeared? This is his second time appearing in the 3-2-1? I'm guessing.
Let's have a look. Well, keep talking, and I'll check.
But largely because, just fantastic running on a couple of those screen passes. And I know that the Saints were playing a little bit of Ole defense on the 78-yard screen pass for a touchdown, including Brandon Browner, who decides instead of chasing Matt Jones down, I'm going to hit an offensive lineman, which is just, that's a Bush League play, no class whatsoever. So I'm going to give it to Matt Jones for that. And of course, I've given it to 2 offensive players, which makes sense on a 47-point day, but I don't want to completely gloss over the fact that the defense only gave up 14 to a very good New Orleans offense. And so as much as it kills me to do it, I'm going to give the 1 to Perry Riley, who he deserves it this week. He played very well. There's other guys certainly that you could look at for it. The defense overall had a good game. And Deshaun Golston had a pick six, which made me consider him. But he also was the one guy who attempted a poor form tackle on the long run that the Saints had, one of their two big plays, and Golston could have stopped that for about a 5-yard gain if he just wraps up on the play. So for me, that kind of disqualified him from the 3-2-1. So Perry Riley, who actually I think played his best game in a while as a Redskin, and I hope he keeps it up, he's going to get the one. And I know that's his first appearance in the 3-2-1 this year.
You're exactly right. That is his first appearance in the 3-2-1. He joins Will Blackman, Corey Lichtensteiger, Ryan Kerrigan, and Jason Hatcher as the only Redskins players to poll 1 vote so far. Matt Jones, he's currently sitting on 3 votes. I can't remember if that was 1 3-vote or 1 2-vote and 1 1-vote combination. Regardless, he's on 3 votes. And you're right, Kirk Cousins is shooting up the leaderboard in the last couple of weeks. He will, with this effort, go to the lead, I believe. He'll go from 5 to 8 and overtake Bashard Breeland, who was the previous leader on 7. So, very interesting votes this week. I can't argue with any of them. I think if it was my job this week, I would have done the exact same votes.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough because, you see, I was a little surprised at the end of the game. I know the game was out of hand and it doesn't make sense to risk players to injury. I was a little surprised they didn't bring Alfred Morris in one more time to see if he could get to 100 because he was sitting on 92 and I'm glad Darrell Young got a couple of carries, but I was a little surprised because I know people are sometimes conscious of that. Now, Alfred Morris just isn't that kind of guy. He doesn't care about stuff like that, so maybe they offered him a chance to come back in and he just said no. But I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I do. Here's a little insight for you. This is something I know of Jay Gruden. He doesn't look at, rush yards and receiving yards. He looks at total yards. So in Gruden's mind, Alfred Morris had a 100-yard day. He had I think it was 14 yards of receiving yards, which put him over that 100-yard mark. So a little quirk in Jay Gruden's approach to how he, considers statistics there.
And quietly, you referenced Jay Gruden. He's had a pretty good few weeks, too. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think he was significantly outcoached by Bill Belichick. I think that actually he handled that fairly well. I think the execution of the players was the bigger problem against New England, and I think he's had a couple of pretty good weeks as a head coach, and he deserved a lot of the criticism he got coming into this last few weeks. But I think he's, I don't know if it's just been lucky for a few weeks and he'll fall back to the guy he was, or if he's rounding into form as a coach. But credit where it's due for the last few weeks.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of another jam-packed episode of the Redskins Capital Connection podcast. As always, thanks for listening. If you're listening to this on Stitcher, iTunes, our website, YouTube, and as of this week, ESPN980.com. So you'll see a bit more about that in my tweets this week. Make sure you check those out at ChadwicoRCC. But yeah, this week, as of this week, ESPN980.com is also a place you can go to listen to the Redskins Capital Connection podcast.
That's right. We're taking over the world, baby. Taking over the world.
One globe at a time. All right, Redskins fans, we'll see you next week. And as always, my co-host Mark is at Redskins Review on Twitter. Get around him. Give him some stick because he gives as good as he takes.
Yeah, absolutely. Give it to me, folks.
All right. See you, Redskins fans.
Take it easy.